Hello, hi everyone. Do you guys see me, hear me? Because I don't see your comments for some reason. Anyway, oh, we've got 10 people. That's amazing. I guess we can get started. So, my name is Vika, first of all, and thank you for being with me today. And we're going to talk about the difference between presentation, practice, and production. Three pillars of English language teaching, I guess. And at the end of the webinar, I'm going to show you how to make all of this, how to set up all the three stages using just one activity and some enthusiasm. So this webinar is going to be especially useful for new teachers, but I hope that more experienced teachers don't mind brushing up on their staging. So I'd like to show you a presentation and tell me if you see it, please, because we'll need it during our webinar. One second. Do you guys see it? Well, I hope you do. So the presentation stage. We all know that it consists of meaning, form, and pronunciation parts. I guess we all remember about that. But how can we know if our presentation is planned successfully? How can we check if it is good or not good? Of course, if your students react, it's good. If they understand you, it's probably perfect. But how can we check it at the preparation stage? I would like you to answer some questions before you finish up with your presentation. So question 1, is the presentation relevant to the context? That's a bit awkward if the topic of the lesson is, let me say, food, and then you all of a sudden start talking about how much hair you've got on your head. By doing that, it's much better to stick to the context. Question 2. Was there a noticing stage? Or in other words, are my students capable of doing the task? Remember that you need to have some noticing. Before you make your students match words with their meaning or do a multiple choice task or like use present perfect, make sure that your students had a chance to see this target language in some text, maybe in a listening part, in a video, or any other way. You can't just take it out of the blue. We all happen to work with students who say, I don't know how to do it, where am I supposed to take it, and so on. And if you have this problem, probably you have skipped this question when preparing. So question 3, do I elicit enough? Presentation is the stage where eliciting is really essential. So make sure you aren't lecturing your students. And surely, eliciting goes hand in hand with concept checking questions. If you're still weak at making good and relevant CCQs, this book will save you. It's Graham Workman, Concept Questions and Timelines. You can easily find it on the internet or on Amazon, contact me or whatever. Just find it if you feel that you need some help with concept checking questions. And remember, do not try to elicit something that your students aren't supposed to know. You can provide them with a definition, with a clear example, with some CCQs, but they simply don't know the word kerfuffle, and that's it. All right, and question 4. Did I check understanding well enough? Remember, during the presentation, you shouldn't just believe that your students understand you. Don't trust them at this stage. You'd better give them some example sentences to complete open class before you move on to the controlled practice. So talking about presentations in general, typical tasks that we use are multiple choice, matching. If you have any extra ideas, I would be glad to hear your comments. We also use gap fill and even gallery walks. And what do you use? Realia. Realia is always good. Lots of ideas. Thank you so much. Okay, so this is everything I want to tell you about the presentation for now. Practice. Let's move on to the practice stage. Practice can be of two types, written controlled practice and oral controlled practice. Remember that the first controlled task is supposed to be an individual one rather than a group one. In most cases, we choose written controlled practice. For sure, you can give some oral practice later, but usually written goes first. So simple tasks like multiple choice, gap fill, and matching will come in handy again. But what is the difference then? If we can use the same types of tasks, what is the difference between presentation and practice? What is the difference? What do you think? All right, I will tell you, don't worry. So, the difference is basically in your role in the classroom. So, during the practice part, you've got some in presentation students notice phenomena. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Helen. So, during the practice stage, your job is to give precise and clear instructions. But what is precise and clear? Just to remind you, just in case you don't remember, the instruction cycle, our favorite one. We start with getting attention. Make sure you make eye contact with all of your students. Make sure they look at you. They're not talking to each other when you're giving instructions. What is the aim? You're not supposed to give them the terminology like by the end of the lesson you will have done this and that. No, but one sentence with like explaining why exactly they need it would be really good. Interaction patterns. Are they working with a partner? Are they working solo? Is it a teamwork? They actually need to know it at the very beginning. Test the activity. At Green Forest, we use screens and projectors for that. What to do? The most important part. Are we matching anything? Are we opening brackets? Are we talking, answering the questions? Tell them what exactly they're supposed to do. Demonstrate. Remember, it is recommended to choose a strong student to demonstrate the activity quickly. ICQs. Again, we don't trust them, we check. But I'd like to emphasize that don't check something that is absolutely obvious, because your students are not babies. Yeah, if they have done gap fill tasks for millions of times, they don't need to hear ICQ like, do you write? Yes, they write. They know about it. Give out the materials. Remember that you shouldn't give out the materials at the beginning of your instruction cycle, because sometimes students are like babies. They might see like, oh, that's a new handout, there's a picture. And yeah, do you speak is also a very good one. So they can get distracted easily. So give out the materials at the end of the activity. Or some students just are too independent and they think that they know what to do and start doing that before you finish up with your instructions. And finally, set the time limit. Students need to know there is some time limit. Don't push on them, but they need to know that they can't waste time. They need to do it as soon as they can. All right, so the first key responsibility during the practice is instruction cycle. Then we go to monitoring. So we've got distance, banished monitoring, but during written controlled practice, it should be a close monitoring, as close as possible. I know that now when we have those online platforms, it's getting a bit more difficult, but it's still absolutely possible. Just don't feel shy looking into their screens. Take their phones into your hands and so on. It's absolutely fine. You need to see what they're doing there. Be polite, of course, because that's like a personal possession. They can be a bit sensitive about their phones, but you have the right to do it and you need to do it. Next one is, of course, feedback. Any activity needs some type of feedback. There are two types of feedback that we use during lessons. It's content feedback and form feedback. Which one do we need for written controlled practice? Content or form? What do you think, guys? Mhm. So our winner is, yes, thank you, ladies. Our winner is the form. Form feedback is our choice. Remember that some oral controlled tasks require both content and form feedback, but not all of them. Our first priority is still the form because, as we have already mentioned, controlled tasks are meant for accuracy rather than fluency. So, to sum up, the difference between presentation and practice is that you do not need to provide much of eliciting or CCQs or drilling, etc. You give an instruction, you monitor, you provide a feedback to mistakes. That's it. You are a perfect teacher. I guess that none of you have problems with differentiating between presentation and production or presentation and practice. But practice and production are often mixed up. And this is what we are going to have a look at next. The difference between practice and production. Let's start with typical tasks for practice. If you have any extra ideas, I would be glad to see them. So for practice, typical tasks are multiple choice, matching, gap fill, gallery walk, and transformation. For production, we typically use role plays, interviews, rephrasing. I guess it's kind of transformation as well. So for production, presentations, dialogues, and I would call them mini projects. Let's have a look at some tasks that teachers often mistake for production, but in fact, these tasks are practice. The odd one out, put the words in order. Thank you so much. So, the first task that teachers mistakenly use for production is find someone who. We have already agreed that controlled practice is focused on accuracy, right? And production is meant for fluency. So we've got find someone who has an Easter basket at home. What happens to this sentence? Students just need to transform the positive sentence into a question. Do you have an Easter basket at home? And the possible answers are yes, I do, and no, I don't. So where is production basically? You might say that students provide some extra information on these questions, and this is production, but it's not actually. Do students necessarily use target language for giving extra information? No, most of them don't use it. The target language here is, I guess, to have, the verb to have, because we have it in all of the categories, and Easter celebrations. So, for example, I'm asked, do you have an Easter basket at home? And I say, yes. I do, and I like it. It's beautiful. My grandma presented it to me. Did I use any target language? No. I guess grandma is not an Easter vocabulary, so that's it. I gave you extra information, but I didn't use any target language. So this task, as long as we do not choose what to ask and almost don't choose what to say, it's an oral controlled practice. How can we make it freer then? Let's imagine that you want to have a similar activity but not a controlled one. Give out empty samples and ask students to make up categories by themselves. For example, to combine the topics of Easter and the verb to have, ask your students to make a list of things that a person needs to have for a successful Easter celebration. And when they have this list, they need to interview each other and check who is prepared for Easter and who is not. And that's actually going to be your content feedback. That's production. I'd like to emphasize that find someone who is a good activity. It's a basic one that any teacher should know how to set up and so on, but it's not production. Just mind it. Use it, but not as a production stage. Our second volunteer is a board game. I actually love board games, and I know board games can vary. Some of them are controlled and some are not, but somehow teachers tend to think that a board game is a good task for production just because it's a board game. But unfortunately, it's not that simple. I would even say that most board games from photocopiable materials are very, very controlled. Let's have a look at this one. This board game is made for first conditional. So we do the first sentence, and our result is if I have a cold, I will see the doctor. How many options do students have? Only one. There is only one option that you can accept. And that's one of the most important features of controlled practice. There is no or almost no choice of what is correct to say. If you want to provide your students with a good production task, let them be creative. You could, for example, give out some pictures or posters of different goods and products and ask your students to create cool, promising slogans for these things, or just some fun slogans. For instance, a picture of an alarm clock will probably make your students produce something. If you buy this alarm clock, you will never be late for work again. This is a typical sentence that your students can make. But is this the only option they have? No, this is just one of the options. They might as well produce something like, you will never get bored again, or you will enjoy waking up in the morning, something like that. And this task would be fun for them. Another typical mistake that I often see is answering questions. Again, there seems to be a lot of target language in these questions. Students have to say them. They speak. That's production, right? No, it's not, unfortunately. Students have to say these words while reading the questions. But who made the questions? The questions were made by the authors, by the teachers, but definitely not by our students. So, do they necessarily use target language when they answer the questions? No, they don't. Let's prove it. Let's have a look at one of the questions. For example, question number 2. Where in your city can visitors be ripped off? And I say, in the city center. When people see you're a tourist, they start selling you everything 3 times more expensive than it should be. Did I answer the question? Yes. Did I use the target vocabulary? No, I didn't. I actually don't need target vocabulary for answering the question. I only use it when I read the question. So basically, this is a recognition task. Your students only need to recognize new words and then their job is done. How can we turn it into production then? Of course we can, but only if you make your students create the questions by themselves. Make them imagine that they're going to visit a friend in some other city of Ukraine and they need to prepare questions about this city. Or you can give out some pictures and ask your students to create posters with warnings and recommendations for students, for tourists, sorry. Warnings and recommendations for tourists. So what is production then? To sum up, everything seems to be so controlled right now. As I have told you before, if the practice part is meant for accuracy, the production is for fluency. And the production features are creativity, or at least some freedom for students to say what they want to say. There should be more than one option of what to say. I would say even more than two. There should be multiple options of what they can say. Context. The context should be suitable for the target language. Give them this chance to use it. It should be relevant. And of course, minimum of instructions. The more instructions we give, the bigger chances that it's gonna be very, very controlled. So let them be creative and independent. Okay, guys, the last thing I want to do for today is to show you a cool thing how to make a lesson, how to convey a lesson out of just one activity. This is the worksheet that I created. It took, well, maybe 3 minutes, maybe two, no more than that. And now we'll see each other again. Well, you will see me probably. All right. So I folded it like this. We've got a simple gap fill task taken from notes by Blue Forest Intermediate level. So that's the main task. This is a table with target vocabulary and some empty lines over here. So I folded in order not to let my students use this space before time or use these sentences before I want them to use it. So I assumed there was some noticing stage because today we're not talking about noticing, and I hope there was some kind of reading or listening or something, so students had a chance to see this target language. Basically, that's personality adjectives. So you start your presentation with asking them to explain the meaning of words. Or if you're not sure they can explain it, you just ask them to sort them out into categories positive, negative adjectives. That also would be fine for the beginning. And you provide them with CCQs, with drilling. I know that we have everything ready-made. We use like PPT presentations. We have everything on the screen, which is super comfortable. But actually, we need to be prepared for anything. And if everything fails you, if you have no internet connection, if something is not right with our online platform, you still are capable of conveying a very, very good lesson. So you know the language. You don't need all these presentations. You don't necessarily need them. You can provide some meaningful pronunciation by yourself. For example, we've got a serial womanizer. So does he have only one girlfriend for a long period? No. Is he going to be a good husband? Probably not. And you provide some drilling as well. So that's it. Our practice stage needs just one little table with words. That's it. Then, for written controlled practice, you ask your students to complete a typical gap fill activity when they need to put these words into sentences. Super easy, very clear, very traditional. For oral controlled practice, I would recommend you to use miming. Miming for personality adjectives is just perfect. They're created for each other. They're meant for each other. Like, you don't even need any extra cards for that. You just ask your students to choose the words secretly and mime them to their teams, to their partners. And believe me, they will enjoy it a lot. Oh, by the way, I totally forgot. You can even provide them with checking understanding over here. You just can speak about some movie characters or about some celebrities that everybody knows. Like an example of an aggressive person, for example. Do we know any aggressive celebrities? Yes, we know Naomi Campbell. She throws things into people. We know Philip Kirkorov, who like beats ladies when he's not happy. So we've got presentation with all of the stages. We've got written controlled, we've got oral controlled, and we've got this empty paper. This is for creativity. Okay, what can we do for Mel Gibson? Yeah, he's very aggressive. I agree. What can we do for production here? You've got absolutely nothing, just an empty lines. That's it, empty piece of paper. You can ask your students to create questions by themselves. You can ask them to describe some more celebrities without saying who they are, like asking them later to guess who the celebrity is. Or you can set up a pyramid discussion, asking them to make top 3 of disgusting traits of human character. That also would be, yeah, students can make questions. That's my first idea, basically. Questions like is the most obvious option probably. But pyramid discussion would be successful, I guess. Guessing celebrities would be fun. If your students are creative enough to think of some good examples, that would be fun. So out of just one activity, we've got presentation, we've got written controlled, oral controlled, and we've got real practice. And I'm pretty sure that your students wouldn't be bored, even though you seem to be even not prepared. Yeah, it looks like you've got only some half-empty worksheet, but they would enjoy this lesson a lot. Basically, that's everything that I wanted to tell you today. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them because we still have like 5 minutes or something. So 2 minutes. We've got 2 minutes. Anyway, if you have any questions, I will be glad to answer to help you somehow. And that's it for today. Thank you. Yeah, sure. I can send my presentation to the teaching center. Yeah, and they will send it to everyone. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad if you need it, if that's going to be useful for you, of course. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Have amazing lessons, good students, be creative, and see you. See you in Odessa, guys.